Hey guys, I wanted to talk about one of the things that has been happening so much in the industry since the sweet epidemic has taken off. There's a few thoughts that I have. I really like the idea of a suite. I don't think I could ever do it because my path in the industry, like as a salon owner, the salon owners that go into suites are former salon owners who failed their business, and don't give me everything happens for a reason or any of those types of things, or your circumstances. If your salon was booming, you wouldn't be in a suite. You'd have employees or renters, and you'd be making some small amount of money from those people. And if you're still a behind the chair hairdresser, you would be benefiting from that relationship while you're making a little bit extra money, and of course having your ego served of being a salon owner. And that's, come on guys, let's all admit it. We don't put the name on the door if we don't have a little bit of an ego, right? So many people do that now. I mean, thankfully, the trends have changed a little bit, but there's a degree of ego involved in salon ownership. Most salon owners don't get into it because they're like, I want to do something different. I want to change the industry. That's usually not what it is, but in other businesses, that is what it is. You're finding a niche. Salon owners generally become salon owners because they were successful hairdressers in the salon, and they decided that their employer was taking half their money, or that they felt that they could get away with paying a lot less in terms of expenses if they opened a bigger space and they had other renters to take some of the rent burden off. And that's traditionally been why people open hair salons. They're a talented, good hairdresser, but they're not a business person, and they don't necessarily have a desire to make the industry a better place. They just usually, and please forgive me if this, we got to look in the mirror on these things, guys, but for the most part, they're just like, how can I exploit my situation as much as possible to my benefit? Like, now, the things that serve your benefit as a successful hairdresser or a salon owner are making people happy, whether that's your team or your clients, or your team and your clients. So obviously, like when I say exploit, I just mean to use. And these things sound really negative, and a lot of people don't really come to terms with why they're in business. But we're in business for usually a couple of reasons: to make money and to have some freedom. That's usually why we go into business. A good business person would never open a hair salon unless they have really big visions of scale, because I can tell you, our salons, even at our peak, when I think, it was when we had like 4 or 5 locations with our academies as well, we didn't really start to make a lot of money until we had scale. And it's not like we could increase the percentage profit in a salon. So if we were doing well in a salon, making 10% profit when rents were reasonable in the city I'm in, then if I'm doing $1.5 million out of a salon, and the salon is basically maxed out, and we're maxed out with staff, and we're now running on shifts, opening at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, going till 10 o'clock at night, you've maxed out that space. And other than incremental increases like raising prices, you have to open another location, and that's how you scale any business. But with a salon that generally has a somewhat finite profit margin, right? The max you can do, unless you do start to exploit in a negative way your team, there's kind of a max you can make in any market. So even let's be generous and say 15% profit. Well, so now you're making 150 grand profit out of that salon location. Excuse me. The only way for you to make more money is for you to open multiple locations, and that's somebody that has vision for a business, and that's a different animal. But most people who go into, this is how I meander, but most people who go into business as hairdressers and then become salon owners don't have that kind of a vision. and they may not have that kind of a business acumen. They're generally just busy hairdressers who had a full chair who wanted to make more money, or got sick of following somebody's rules and also sharing the money they were making. And then they usually go in for a rude awakening, and everything, what goes up generally must come down. And it's a very rare situation that, a salon that is a cool salon today is a cool salon 20 years ago. That is a thriving salon today 20 years in the future ago, I said. And all you have to do is look backwards and say, what were the cool salons in your area 20 years ago, and how are they doing today? Are they still cool? Are they still looking like they're, the same salon 20 years ago, where it's like, good Lord, you need new furniture, new paint, and a whole lot younger staff because all of a sudden you become an old lady salon? I always talk about an old lady salon like it's a negative, but it's like half my clients are old ladies, and I love them dearly. Talking to you, Doreen. All the love. But if you want to keep your salon vibrant and youthful, you got to be developing young staff and hiring young, and then phasing yourself out of the business when you start to, I don't know, maybe kind of get a little bit more mature and start focusing on your business rather than working in your business, all that stuff. Y'all know that. But anyways, suites. The vast majority of salon owners that are in suites failed their salons, and they'll often say, oh, I was tired of the drama and I was tired of this, but ultimately their businesses failed. Okay? So we see this suite business just absolutely taking off, and it seems on the surface to be unsustainable. Excuse me. Because first of all, like, if you're in a high rent area and your suite is in a cool area, you're probably paying a lot of money for it, and you'd probably could have negotiated a better deal with an employer that would have probably had you roughly making the same amount of money, and then having a little bit of support and having the benefits. Not everything is about money. Sometimes there's also about benefits to the relationship, but that's cool as well, because sometimes people are like, I'm sick of this shit and I want to be by myself and just focus on my clients, and I totally get that too. But if you're a salon owner, that is not why you're in a suite. You're in a suite because your salon failed. So what I see in the suite business consistently is, it seemed really, really exciting. And it's the reason I'm speaking about this now is because it's relatively new in Vancouver, where I live. Obviously, it's been going on forever in the States. And, I have friends that own suite businesses, and I've toured through, Salon Republic. I've toured through a couple of their locations because I have so many friends in those places. And I think the reason those places work okay is because they are doing massive volume as well, and they're not trying to maximize their rent from each person because they have the numbers. Some of those places have 100 suites in them, so they're not necessarily bending everybody over, bending their tenants over to squeeze every dollar and make their money back right away. It seems to be more of a long-term business investment, and they can afford to be maybe making them a little bit more affordable, whereas the ones in Vancouver are pretty expensive. And what we're seeing happening with these is basically chair renters or former salon owners are going into suites, and they're finding out that it's not sustainable, and they're either moving, they're not lasting very long. They're only lasting a couple of years. And there's another thing that tends to happen is, go to any event and hang around any product company, and you'll see the vast majority of the people at these events are suite owners, because as soon as they isolate themselves from the rest of the hair community, they start seeking community again. And it's kind of a sad thing for me to see, because I understand, like, grass is greener, and I understand you get fed up with where you are in life. But the one thing that it seems like hairdressers need, and very few hairdressers seem to be able to survive without this. Some hairdressers on social media talking about what an introvert they are. If you're on social media talking about yourself, you're not an introvert. You're an egomaniac, like me. And you're just, it's like, I could go off because there's so many people who love to talk about how unique they are. And it's like, if you're truly unique and if you're truly an introvert, you're not trying to draw attention to yourself on social media. But what a lot of hairdressers are, we consider ourselves introverts for one reason, and that's because we gave at the office, right? I give socially at work. So when I come home, I don't have friends. I don't have friends because I'm an asshole, but also because I gave so much socially at work that I have met all of my social needs in being a nurturing friend, because I love all my clients. And I love that every 2 months I get together with my clients and we catch up for a long period of time. And then at the end of the visit, you can tell the clients are like, okay, let me out of here. I've had enough of you, for 2 to 3 months. And then they come back and it's like all hugs and we're all excited to see each other. But I go off and I'm just going. But anyway, one of the things that I always see with these guys that go independent, in the suites in particular, is they actively are so desperate to seek out community because they've isolated themselves so much from the industry. And it's not all it's cracked up to be. And sometimes there's a lot of value to standing beside people who inspire you. I have people on my team who inspire me all the time. I have people on my team that are wildly successful who ask me color advice and I ask them color advice, and we bounce things off of each other. And they'll say, I'm in deep trouble because I have a mistake in my booking and I need to deal with this. How can I sort this? And we just work through this kind of stuff together. So there's a lot of value in terms of support. It's so weird, nobody's in this curb lane. You can't see the crazy traffic jams beside me. This is going to come to a head where I'm going to have to merge over, but hot damn, I found the good lane. Anyways, that sense of community and support, while it may be that you're sick of your salon environment, you're sick of certain coworkers, I feel like the suite business is temporary for almost everybody. And the other thing that I see in the suite business, I see so much desperation, because all of a sudden, anytime you move, you're going to lose clients, no matter what. So when a renter, say you were renting prior, you go into a suite, you're going to lose a bunch of your clients, no question. Just even moving like down the road, you're going to lose clients. So as a hairdresser, if you're not rebuilding, what I think the statistic was, if 1 out of every 5 clients isn't a new client to you, then you're not building. You're either stagnating or you're declining, because clients are dropping off all the time. And it is so much harder to build in a suite. It is so difficult because now you've got all these independent businesses that are competing with each other in the same building. They all want the same clients, and you can, listen, let's face it. We can all say, no, we're all so supportive of each other. But when you're sitting there dead and you see your type of client walk right past you, in your head, you're like, I want to do that person. I want that person in my chair. And there is going to be a degree of cannibalizing. It happens in regular employee-based hair salons, for God's sakes, let alone when you're actually responsible for covering the rent. So these guys are now, if they're not necessarily used to promoting themselves, because even as a chair renter, there's so many of these people who are chair renters that are like not taking new clients anymore, that kind of angle. And as soon as these guys go to suites, all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, I'm desperate for new clients. And they start promoting themselves, discounting services, asking, a friend of mine has just posted asking for Google reviews the other day. It's tough out there. It's a super, super tough business. And what we end up doing, they'll go into the suites, they'll spend a whole bunch of money. Very often they'll partner with somebody else because suites are so expensive. They'll get a 2-chair suite so they can split the rent. Well, guess what? Like, I'm not saying this for everybody, but guess what? You might realize that the person who you rented a chair with as your friend, who was 3 stations over, but you connected with between clients and you thought, this is my bestie. When you're in a freaking 140 square foot space working right next to them and you have no other distractions other than hearing them breathe and making the same stupid joke all the time, and you have nowhere to go, and you realize they have an annoying habit of not washing their color bowls or not doing the same. It's a partnership in a business, and I'll tell you guys, every single business partnership, unless they are family, goes bad. It is so unusual for a business partnership to survive. Usually these things go bad in the first year. It happens all the time. The amount of people, I used to give a little bit of advice, sometimes warrant, or sometimes asked for, sometimes not. But people write me and ask me questions. It's kind of a cool thing. I'm a little bit off the radar now, but I would like to maybe get back out there. But I have so much going on in my world right now that I feel like I don't have the energy to create the industry dialogue that I would like to create for you guys. But people write me and ask me questions. Not as much as they used to, but they do. And the amount of people that write me to talk about a bad business partner, and how do I get out of this, and what are my options? When you're renting a suite and you're with your bestie and you guys are renting a suite together, it's unlikely it's going to last, because every relationship, things start to get annoying, right? When my first salon with my wife, when we opened, we had 4 chairs in the salon, but it was in one small room, and it was just the two of us. And we were both, steady, busy. I think we were engaged at the time. I don't think we were married yet. And we had a dog together, and we had a very, very common vision, because I knew she was going to be my life partner. But that didn't mean that I didn't completely annoy the shit out of her, just the same way I do now, 27 years later. Right? Of course I annoyed the shit out of her. Now, she had to be with me because we had a dog together, we had bought an apartment together, and she had no choice. But your business partner bestie in your suite, who you're just like, let's just you and me do our thing, that shit's gonna go bad. And you guys are not gonna be friends anymore unless you got out early. But that's what these guys are always doing. They're always trying to find somebody to pick up some of the extra expenses by renting. I see it all the time. I see ads. We have a part-time chair available Sundays and Tuesdays from 10 to whatever, because these guys are barely scraping by, and they're trying to get somebody to come in and pay those bills. And I don't know if this is like that in every city, but it is absolutely like that in Vancouver. I see it all the time. We have a wonderful forum on Facebook where people do job postings, and we see that all the time. And it's because people can't afford these suites. They're realizing they were making as much money as an employee, and they were making more money probably as a renter. So they're now trying to, get out of these things. It doesn't seem to be a very sustainable business here, where the rents are insane. And like I said, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. I see so many salon owners that are now going into suites saying that they're trying to simplify their lives, but they failed. Like, don't try. And this kind of goes back to my last video where I said there's no shame in failure. If you're not admitting your failure and why your salon went under, then you're doing a disservice to the rest of the people out there. This whole attitude of this was meant to be, or that, it's such a cop out, and it's so freaking annoying to see people just shrug off their responsibility. Why don't you just say, my business failed for these reasons? Why don't you be a coach? The reason I talk now, I don't talk about success. I talk about navigating failure and avoiding failure, because it is so hard to deal with. And nobody else does it. And if more of you hairdressers who are out there blowing smoke, trying to, I'm in my zen now, and you're so full of shit, have the balls to say, here's why my business failed. Here's why I was not a successful business owner. Here's why I was not a successful salon owner. And here's what I would do differently if I was to do it again. Now, it doesn't mean you want to do it again, but it hopefully means you've learned from your mistakes, because that's what life is. I can tell you 100% of the chain of events that happened in my business that caused it to fail. I can absolutely tell you that. And it starts with ego. It's so much of it starts with ego. Now, I've been really, really successful, and most of the things that I touched as a salon owner worked, and they were really successful. So therefore, my wife, who was certainly my yin to my yang, or my yang to my yin, there was a point that she kind of was like, okay, fine, I'll just let him do it, because I was doing so well with the decisions I was making. And I was a little bit of a renegade, and I was doing my thing, and it was really successful until it wasn't. But my ego got in the way because I didn't learn anything from those successes, right? When everything works, you don't learn anything. You only learn from your failures. So for you salon artists, do you want me to tell you why I failed? Like the specific things? I'm going to do that as a separate video. I will do the chain of events that caused the collapse of my business. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do another video of it. Stay tuned. But the value that you have as a failed salon owner to share your failures and to tell people what you would have done differently. And again, it doesn't mean you want to get back on that horse, because let's face it, if I had the energy that I had when I was 30, I would be probably trying to take over the world again with a newfound and more balanced approach with the knowledge that I have now. But I don't have the energy for it. I'm 56. I know I do this every time I say my age, but I know I look good. I'm 56 and I don't have the energy today. So now I have a different goal, and that is, to create a situation where my business becomes self-sustaining with leadership and management, but with a lot less drama. That is my next phase of business. I'm looking for a much less emotional relationship with our business, and maybe I'll talk about that in a future video anyways. But the value you have as a failed business owner to share with other people in our industry is so vital. We could, I've seen threads of it where, what would you do differently if you could? And people will say it. But when I see that there's so many of these guys who are like social media superstars who build these big salons and do well for a little while, but they haven't built a sustainable thing. They're going by flame. They're going by the heat. Well, the heat burns out. You've got to have something, a fire burns out. You've got to have those long burning coals in your business. Don't go for the big fire. You want to build something up, and it takes time. The faster your business explodes, the more quickly it's going to implode, I think. Anyway, it's one of those things that really bothers me. I'm sick of people talking about Zen in our industry. When it's a cop out, and stop with your nonsense and start sharing your failures. Start talking about why you failed and helping the next generation of this industry. Because especially if you've taken yourself out of salon ownership, which if you were owning a hair salon, then you should have been positioning yourself as a mentor. And if you weren't being a great mentor, now's your chance to actually be a mentor. Because, by the way, guys, being a mentor for being popular on Instagram and posting only your best days and only your best work and all your bullshit and all your positivity, that's just freaking sugar. And there's every one of those people who validates you for your sugar. It's totally empty. You need to be giving people a bit of meat, and start sharing a bit of the meat, guys. Your Instagram following, those are your yes people. Let's get to the meat of sharing with the rest of the industry why you failed, what you did wrong, what you would have done differently if you could, showing your growth, as opposed to saying that you've transitioned into your Zen space now and you're much happier, because that's complete bullshit. You're not much happier because your business failed. If your business was wildly successful, you could have all of the things that you claim that you're having now that you weren't able to do. If you had worked harder and smarter and better in your business, you could now actually have that Zen kind of life, and while owning a business and not having to be a full-time hairdresser if you did well. I say this as I'm going to work to coach my team for the first 2 hours every Thursday. I have a class with all of my junior stylists. My goal is not to do anything but get them to graduate this class so that I can have faith that they can cut straight lines and give great consultations and do hair and not make people upset, only to coach them to greater success, to move them up the ladder within my business, That's what I do for the first 2 hours of every Thursday, still myself. And then I'm going to do some clients, and then I'm going to knock off a little bit early because I've earned it, right? I'm not in there full time anymore. Even though my business isn't necessarily profitable, I don't have to be there in full time. And then tomorrow I've got a big full day, and what's really exciting tomorrow is my son's coming in as our assistant, and my lovely wife is going to come in. We never work at the same salon together because, going back to my first thing where I annoy the shit out of her. So, but also we have 2 locations. So where if I'm at one, she tends to be at the other one. We try not to cross over too much. So it's a real treat for me to work with her because she'll work as far as humanly possible away from me. She'll go the furthest corner of one end of the salon. And if I come over to visit her, you can see that she's like, what do you need? Anyway, so I do still work in my business, but I get tremendous joy out of working in our salons. And I would not get this joy if I was working by myself. I would not have I could never, I'm going to go back to a sweet thing. This thing's what, 25 minutes now. I could never work in a suite. I could never, because my path isn't just about hair anymore. My path is, and it hasn't been about hair for me this sounds terrible because that's not true. It is about hair, but my path is about sharing and nurturing and hopefully inspiring, and hopefully I would say I'm not a good leader at all, because I'm kind of tired of the drama of leadership, but I lead when I need to lead. But my joy in going to work is because, like I said earlier, it is my social life. I don't have the energy to try to make friends, take up a hobby. All my hobbies are insular, right? Like I collect records, and I mountain bike, and I bike alone, and I listen to records alone. So I don't have the energy to try to create friends. So I have to own hair salons to have people that smile when I walk in the door and pretend they're happy to see me. And some of them actually are. Back in the old days, they weren't. Back in the old days, if they would even find the energy to pretend to be happy to see me, I knew they were faking it, or at least a lot of them. But now I feel like when I walk in, I don't think they're faking it. I think they are ambivalent. Anyways, have a great day, guys. Own up to your failures. Let's talk about it. Do a post. Make a fucking post, guys, and just say, hey, it's time for me to come to terms with why my business failed, and I thought I'd share something. Here's 5 things I wish I'd done differently. Challenge is on you.